Thank you for staying with us. Nigeria battles against the continuous rise in prices as it persists, as the country's inflation rate now stands at 34.19%. That's the figure of June 2024. Well, NBS gave us as a National Bureau of Statistics amidst the ongoing economic reforms being instituted by government. According to the latest data, the figure represents a significant escalation from the previous month's rate of 33.95%, underscoring the persistent challenges facing the government's efforts to rein in the high cost of living. The surge in inflation has been particularly acute in the food sector, with NBS reporting a year-on-year food inflation of 40.87% in June. For more perspectives, I introduced her earlier. She's an investment analyst with Chapel Hill, Denham, Nabila Mohammed. Good afternoon, and thank you so much for coming on the program this afternoon. We appreciate this.
Thank you for having me, Mr. Tolu.
I think we should start this conversation let me ask you, what were you projecting, or what were you guys at Chapel Hill projecting for inflation for the month of June? We find ourselves at 34.19%. Some said 34.25%. Some were even higher than that. But what did you project, and what do you make of what we have?
So what we projected was way higher than, slightly higher than what was released. We projected around 34.69%. Year-on-year for the month of June 2024, and it's largely because of what we really saw happen in June 2024, like just looking at the realities on ground and how inflationary pressures still persisted throughout that month. So we projected higher, and numbers did come in slightly below our forecast of 4.69%. What was printed, yes, that's the positive surprise that we saw with the number. However, the negative surprise that we saw with the June CPI was the month-on-month disinflation that was truncated, given that the past 3 months did see some level of disinflation on a month-on-month basis.
I think that month-on-month basis, let's take it up from there. There's been a slight decline, right? And what would you say is responsible for that? Is it looking like some of the policies of the CBN are starting to pay off?
So for the month-on-month, yes, we can liken that to the CBN policies that started to pay off in the past 3 months before June. The persistent hike in interest rates and some level of stability that we had in the FX rates, especially in the first quarter of the year when we had inflows from FPIs as sort of cushioned the impact on the FX market. That season as well, for the first 5 months, really wasn't it's a period where we had rain that could be attributed to the flooding and other weather-related issues that could hinder or sort of pressure food production levels from the inflation part. So really what we noticed with those months that we had month-on-month disinflation, we did see the policies really working. But there are things that are really beyond the control of the monetary authorities that they can hardly cater to. So we still have those pressures persist, and that is largely why we're seeing that month-on-month inflation resurfaced at 2.31% versus 2.14% that it was in May 2024.
Now, talking about investments now, we saw that the last figures from the NBS talking about capital importation grew a bit. But of course, it's still more of the FPIs and not the FDIs. What's your take with regards to investors' confidence?
So really, we always classify FPIs as hot money. As they come, they go immediately. But what I would like to say is that for FDIs to really come and stay in this country, we need to look at the infrastructural levels that we are currently at, because that is what we engender them to want to come and set up their businesses here. We would have more multinationals coming to set up their Nigerian businesses because there is stable power supply, because there is adequate security, because there is good road network, and all those other infrastructural needs that we need to put in place for FDIs to really come and stay. So for FDIs, we largely saw them because of the fact that there was hiking interest rates, and that sort of made them to want to come into the country to invest, given the high interest rates and high yield environment. But aside that, FDIs really need more than high interest rate environment to come and set up their business, to come and stay in the country. So all those issues really have to be addressed for us to see an improvement in FDIs in the long run, based on the data that was released.
You're aware that sometime last week, Africa's richest man, Alhaji Aliko Dangote, talked about interest rates and the impact on the entire business community. Yes, and you know, for him to come out to say that, it means that something is really happening. Borrowing is not so interesting now for business people. Of course, the real sector has been talking about this, complaining about the effect of this consistent rise in interest rate and what it means for their businesses. But the CBN seems to be, maybe in one way, helpless. Say like, that's the way we need to go. We need to continue to increase rates so that we rein in on inflation. How does all of this come to you? Give us your understanding of this on this sentiment that something is the way it's happening at this time.
So really, as we know, the CBN, or should I say the monetary policy authorities, have very little tools really to rein in inflation. So the tools they have, they will make use of them. If it is to mop up excess liquidity in the system, we are seeing that clearly because currently system liquidity is at 5-year low in the negative, and we have seen that even the previous OMO auction that they held, there were no sales, and it just speaks to how much they have milked the system of liquidity. And that is what they can really do, aside hiking interest rates, of course, to cater to the demand side of inflation. But we really need to see some of the policies from the fiscal end of things to start to play out. Yes, they have started to talk around removing import duties on things that certain food items just to address food inflation going forward. But there's the exchange rate part of it as well, which the CBN would really have to look at in order to ensure that there is stability in the FX rates, and that would sort of support the policy around removing the import duties over the period of time that it has stipulated based on what the government has said. So all these issues really have to be put in place for us to see that overall, the hiking of interest rates, the mopping up of liquidity from the system, as well as supporting policies from the federal government will address inflation in the long term. But in the short term, these pressures still persist, and we still see that this could sort of impact the July figures when they are released or announced by the National Bureau of Statistics in August.
We're waiting for those figures. Now, you touched on something very important, the suspension of duty and waivers, tariff and taxes on some essential food items imported into the country.